that doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin doesn't do well when gold does well. I think it's a similar sort of things benefit both currencies. But if I was to bet, I think the next monetary system will still have the dollar as a reserve currency. It'll have a bunch of other fiat currencies, but nations will settle global trade imbalances in gold.
This content is brought to you by VeChain, which is a leading enterprise-grade Layer 1 public blockchain spearheading a digital revolution from a sustainable, highly scalable smart contract platform. The VeChain blockchain has many unique features, which makes it an ideal choice for Web3 applications. VeChain is working with many great enterprises such as PwC, Givenchy, BMW, and Walmart China. Most recently, they partnered with the Boston Consulting Group to build a revolutionary decentralized application ecosystem. I'm a big believer in this project. I have been since 2018. I've been a VET token holder for years. And this blockchain is highly scalable, great with security and speed, and it has low energy consumption. If you'd like to learn more about VeChain, please visit vchain.org. Link will be in the description. Hey, everybody, welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and my guest today is Arthur Hayes, who is the co-founder of BitMex and the CIO at Maelstrom. Arthur, great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Arthur, we were talking before the recording. I followed you for years. Appreciate your views on crypto as well as the macro. And boy, do I have a lot of questions for you because it's tariff turmoil out there. It's wild, but I want to get your background. I usually love to, hear about people's stories and how they got to crypto. Where did you grow up? How did you get into TradFi, and how did that lead to crypto?
So I grew up in a small place called Buffalo, New York. It's a post-industrial city in New York State, New York, Canada, in the Great Lakes region of the United States. I went to university in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania Wharton Undergraduate Business School. And in university, I made a decision that I wanted to, make my mark in China. So I studied Chinese and moved out to Hong Kong when I graduated and worked for Deutsche Bank and Citibank in the TradFi world. I was exchange traded market maker for both firms and helped them grow that business in the region. I subsequently lost my job at Citi, thankfully, in 2013, read the Bitcoin white paper, got hooked, started trading, started BitMex by 2014 with my other two co-founders, Ben Dilo and Sam Reed, and sort of the rest is history.
And you mentioned you read the Bitcoin white paper. How did you learn about Bitcoin? Did a friend tell you about it? Did you see it on a forum? And when did it click for you? What was your aha moment?
So I was a big zero hedge consumer. I think, actually, I think the content was a bit better 10, 15 years ago, but whatever, that's just my opinion. And they posted an article about this thing called Bitcoin that I think surged in price to something like $250 or whatever it was back in spring of 2013. And I thought that was quite interesting. And so, let me just read about it, see what's going on, because I didn't have a job and I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And sort of the philosophy and the ethos behind sound money and decentralization really spoke to me. I was a bit of a gold bug. I had my, little stash of gold coins in a safe deposit box because I thought the Fed was going to end the world and all kind of shit like that. So the Satoshi's prophecies and sort of teachings sort of really clicked with me on a level. I was like, wow, I can really get in on the ground level here and hopefully build something quite impactful in this Bitcoin cryptocurrency ecosystem.
And then with BitMex, I remember you guys had amazing volumes. You were doing so well. What happened with BitMex? And was it more of, we find ourselves in the KYC AML world now, and then you guys kind of took a hit in that way?
So obviously, we had a bad rap going up against the U.S. government. We lost. Obviously, we've been vindicated post, but whatever. And we grew really fast, made some poor hiring decisions, and our competitors were able to, take what we built and the products that we created and build a better trading platform. And that's hashtag business. So, but BitMex is still around. We're still trying to make a comeback here. So the story's not over yet.
And obviously you're an OG, Arthur. When you look back at where things were, the cypherpunk days of Bitcoin, and then you have this entire asset class that was birthed out of Bitcoin, and where we are now with TradFi getting involved and ETFs and much more. How does that feel? What are your thoughts around all of that change?
I think it's great. At the end of the day, what's the point of Bitcoin? It's a social experiment. Can we create this monetary system in our minds out of nothing that's based on computers and cryptography? And can this mind virus spread all over the world and get other people to believe that these bits of information have value and can be used to buy real goods and services? So it's amazing that all sorts of people, from governments to large banks to asset managers, are all, trading Bitcoin, have an opinion about it, are talking about it. Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't really matter, but it's in the conversation. I can't imagine there's any serious investor out there in the world who doesn't know what Bitcoin is. Whether they think it's a scam or not, it doesn't really matter. But we want to be recognized. The worst thing is to be ignored.
And with the talks of Bitcoin being part of a reserve now in the United States, and you have other nation states and countries that are mining Bitcoin like Bhutan and so forth, are there at the cusp of another Bretton Woods? Are we going to see Bitcoin sitting alongside gold backing fiat?
I don't think so. I think that governments, it's in their best interest to maintain their power to issue their own currency and do the types of things that they do with that, good and bad. And if we're going to go back to sort of a neutral reserve asset, I think it's going to be gold, because central bank managers and governments have thousands of years of history of using gold as a commodity form of money. This sort of creates some stricture around how much people can spend at the government level. So that doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin doesn't do well when gold does well. I think it's a similar sort of things benefit both currencies. But if I was to bet, I think the next monetary system will still have the dollar as a reserve currency. It'll have a bunch of other fiat currencies, but nations will settle global trade imbalances in gold.
So I guess my question is, and maybe you touched on this a bit. So where does Bitcoin fit? If that's the case, right? And they're putting gold on the blockchain. They're going to tokenize gold. So where does Bitcoin fit? Is it a hedge against all of that, the fiat and the governments, even though it's being part of a government reserve now?
Well, I mean, I think basically the U.S. government reserve is literally just, they still seized a bunch of Bitcoin from people, and they're not going to sell it. That's what the reserve is. Other countries, the reserve is, hey, we have excess energy, and instead of, wasting it somehow, we're going to save it by mining Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is our energy saving. So you have that in the Middle East, you have that in China. You mentioned Bhutan as well as another country with excess energy trying to do that as well. So that's how I see Bitcoin fitting into this. It's just another system. It's a purely digital system. But if we're talking about the evolution of monetary policy, I think we're going to go back to something that, the people in charge are very familiar with, which is, fiat currencies issued by relevant governments. And when I trade with another government or system, I settle in gold because I don't trust the management of your fiat currency.
Interesting. So settling in gold, do you think then gold might back some of these stable coins or CBDCs that they're going to, obviously they're tokenizing the fiat currencies. How does that relationship work?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't think that matters one way or the other. I don't know why you'd want to create a tokenized version of gold. People want to hold gold, right? That's the whole point of it. If you want tokenized gold, obviously it's a different thing, but that's what Bitcoin is. It's an electronic version. It moves faster. It's got a different sort of set of properties. But if you want to hold gold, tokenizing means you're just trusting somebody else to hold your gold. That's not the fucking point. The point is to hold your own gold.
So let's talk about what's happening in the markets now with the macro. We got tariff madness happening, right? Arthur, give us the lay of the land. How are you seeing this play out? What is Trump trying to achieve here, and how does this impact the markets this year?
I think that Trump has been very consistent with his message. The execution has been iffy on it, but when he came into power in 2016, he kicked off the first trade war with China, and starting in 2018, and it's all about his belief. And the people who voted for him believe that America's gotten a raw deal over the past 50 years, that China and other countries, specifically China, because they're the biggest beneficiary of this, have taken advantage of the openness of American markets, and they've essentially built this amazing manufacturing juggernaut and then stuffed America full of cheap goods. And then the American capitalist class have essentially sold out the average American worker by shipping all the best jobs overseas and retaining all the profits in terms of high corporate profits and shareholder returns at that level. And so that's sort of his message. Now, he started out in 2018 with the trade war in China, kind of fizzled out by the time he finished in 2020. He campaigned on a similar sort of promise in 2024. Again, similar ethos. America's gotten a bad deal. We're going to come after all these countries who've been taking advantage of us. And I'm going to unveil these, mind-bogglingly amazing tariffs very quickly into my second term in office. And what did he do? He tasked the people, I don't know which cabinet official runs this thing, but he tasked them to say, hey, come up with a tariff plan by April 2nd. And they did it. And this is what it was. Now, obviously, it was a lot more bombastic and bigger than a lot of people thought. But again, it fits with the goal. There's a current account deficit that's in the trillions of dollars every year. He says, I want to close that as quickly as possible. And so they came up with this formula. I mean, a lot of people, try to deride it as sixth grade math and all these other things. But if his goal is, I want to remove this deficit that I have as quickly as possible, then slapping on some massive tariff on all these countries based on the annual deficit that they have with the US makes a bit of sense. And so that's what he's doing. It's very consistent. The methods have changed a bit, but he's very consistent. So I think, right now people are thinking in the denial stage. Oh, he's not that serious. Oh, if the market drops another few percent on equities, he's going to stop or what have you. But I don't think so. I think he's going for broke on this. It's early in his first term. The election, at least for a lot of Republican legislators, is not until 2026 and the end of the year. So he has some time to take some hits politically and economically before engineering what he will call as a glorious revolution in America coming into, the third quarter of 2026. So I think we're in the start of, this is just another signpost in the unraveling of this post-1971 fiat regime. 2008 was the first tremor that was papered over with printed money. Then we had COVID, and now we have this. And again, it's a trend that was going to happen anyways. I think that the U.S. and China will decouple into two different systems, and then every country will kind of choose which side they're on.
Interesting. So do you think we might see the Fed use the same playbook it did in 2008 as well as March 2020, where they have to cut rates ASAP and also start the money printer again?
Absolutely. I don't know what the trigger is going to be when you have, this amount of carnage in the TradFi markets. Somebody's going to go bust. And obviously we know that the system cannot allow any of its vested interests, banks, large asset managers, interconnected hedge funds to ever suffer catastrophic losses. And so the Fed will step in, and maybe it won't be QE or money printing as we traditionally understand it. Every time is a bit different because internally the Fed believes that they're fighting the good fight, that they are, great stewards of the United States dollar, that they are going to make sure that inflation is contained, unemployment is low, and they are not going to engage in money printing when inflation is above their 2% target. So it might not be called QE. It might be something else, right? The 2023 regional banking crisis, they created this thing called the Bank Term Funding Program, which I said was a $4 trillion money printing exercise. Now, they don't call it quantitative easing because technically under the economic definition, how they define it, it's not. So they can say, no, I didn't print any money. I just, supported the banking system. But it's all the same thing. And obviously Bitcoin snitched through all that bullshit. And we went from 20,000 to, 70,000 pretty quickly after they enacted that bailout. So again, we're going to get a bailout. I don't know what it looks like, but we know that it's going to provide some sort of printed money in some way, shape, or form. But they're not going to call it like they call everything else.
So, Arthur, is this, with your experience in TradFi and much more, is this the only playbook they have? There's no other solution? And until something changes. I don't know, maybe in 100 years, because we're all in some super digital world where money and everything is on the blockchain. I don't know. They have another solution and it's not fiat currency.
So there is another solution. The solution is you had a business, you made bad decisions, you went bankrupt, and we allow you to go bankrupt, and the creditors take over your business. That is how capitalism is supposed to work.
Mm.
They tried a bit of that in 1929. Nobody really liked it. That's hard to get reelected when you actually let the vested interests go bankrupt. And so they said, okay, no, every time the system has to reset and expunge credit from it, we're going to make sure that never happens. And we're going to backstop the system. And that is what the Federal Reserve and the US Treasury Department has done ever since the Fed's been created in 1913. There's never, apart from the Great Depression, which, was a little bit of that, the Treasury Secretary at the time, Andrew Mellon, had a famous quote saying, "Liquidate labor, liquidate capital, stop people from living high, make them be more responsible," kind of thing, right? That is not a great way to get reelected.
Mm.
Argentina's trying it, but they've been doing money printing in the most egregiously aggressive fashion since, Perón and Kitchener for the last 50 years. So that's a reaction to that. But, look at the rhetoric from Trump and Xi, and the leaders of the EU and Japan. No one's saying, hey, we spent too much money. We borrowed too much from the future. So I'm sorry, people today, we're going to have to take a bit of some harsh medicine and retrench a bit. No, they're saying, I have an answer. It's, more government. It's money printing. It's all these different types of things. Even Trump, who's not exactly the most more government type of person, his plan is to move from a 7% budget deficit to a 3% budget deficit by 2028. His plan is not to move from a 7% budget deficit to a government surplus, because that would require a lot of cutting of government spending. So again, even Trump, the most anti-government, he's got Elon swinging a sledgehammer with his Department of Government Efficiency thing, is not even saying he wants to move to a primary surplus in his domain. So austerity, this notion that we're going to reduce the amount of credit fiat within the system, is not the policy. It is money printing, called in different ways depending on the cultural sensitivities of your particular nation state. But that is the only answer they have, because the other answer of credit destruction means that all of them won't be in power anymore.
So in addition to that, right, being close to the money printer, whichever president, either Democrat or Republican, right, there's a temptation there, right? Print our way out, inject liquidity, solves a problem, I get reelected. In addition to that, is it also the world we live in? Everybody's retirement is tapped into the stock market with leverage. And if you let the collateral go down too far, people lose faith in the system and they'll be rioting in the streets. Like, I just think about the boomers, right? And all their retirement and everything like that. They can't let this thing go to zero.
I mean, but do you care if a bunch of geriatrics are in the street? What are they going to do?
But you know what I mean? Not just the geriatrics. But
bunch
also
of people on Ozempic in the street. What are they going to do? Like it's the young people who,
Yeah.
they're watching their parents like, oh, wow, I can't buy a house. My job sucks if I can get one. What is this life that I busted my ass to go to university for? And yet my parents own all the assets and are the richest generation in human history. So I think there's a generational conflict going on. And yes, if you let the system collapse or retrench to a more sustainable level, I bet the Gen Z and younger would feel hopeful again about their future, that they had something to look forward to, something to build a family for, rather than this abject, just sort of like dystopia lying flat, all these different things. Every single culture has a manifestation of this ire against the boomers and what they've constructed. So yes, if they let the system collapse, I think the younger generation would cheer it.
I guess this goes out into bigger things, but that's probably why you're seeing the decline in birth rates and population, right? The boomer was I believe the biggest boom in babies and things like that. That economy was driven by that demographic, but then it started ramping down, and we're getting the bad end of the stick, so to speak, with the boomer economy, and folks feeling disenfranchised.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's generational warfare going on. And if you look at who's in charge of every major, you know, government, it's, Gen X and boomers who are the ones in charge.
Now, Arthur, with this macro uncertainty and fear and what's happening in the markets, do you see the Bitcoin cycle and even the bull market cycle extending further into 2026? Last year, we were ahead with the ETF launch. Bitcoin hit a new all-time high before the halving, but it seems like things are slowing down. Do you think it pushes into 2026?
So first, I think we're still in a bull market, right? We've had a 30-ish% correction from the all-time high, perfectly normal for Bitcoin. We'll see if we're able to hold the 70,000 mark if we continue to get another downdraft in the price. I think we will. That TBD on that. And again, I try not to get sucked into this. Bitcoin must have this 4-year cycle, and with the halving being the starting of the run upwards. Yes, it's worked in the past. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll work in the future.
Mm.
I'm more concerned about global liquidity. We know that Bitcoin is now more entrenched and more believed to be the only true free market where I can know what does the world think about how much units of fiat are sloshing around and will be sloshing around in the near future. That is Bitcoin. It trades 24/7. No central bank controls it. No government controls it. That's why it exists. And so I think if we believe that we're at this moment where we're transitioning into a different monetary system, different trade system, and we know that every single major leader wants to cushion the blow to their population by doing some sort of fiscal or monetary accommodation, money printing, then I think we're at a moment where we could see, this cycle extend possibly past this 4 years, or maybe we just get a really, really intense compressed run up to a million or some ridiculous
Mm.
number that no one could imagine is possible in such a short period of time because Bitcoin is saying, yes, there's going to be so much money printed compressed in such a short period of time because we're moving to a new system, and therefore the price of Bitcoin should be some ridiculous number.
Mm. If the Fed does go back to some sort of a QE, right, and whatever they call it, do you see kind of a March, or I should say 2020 after March, that strong run up, like what you're saying, like maybe to 150 by the end of Q2 or Q3, and then, but it's not following maybe the normal 4-year cycle. We don't have a true bear market like we've seen historically.
I mean, there definitely will be a bear market for sure, because our expectations of what the future amount of fiat growth will outpace what actually happens, right?
Mm.
But I think if we're talking about what's going to reignite Bitcoin from this, 70,000 to 100,000 chop that we've been in for the last few months, I think it's the Fed capitulates, then the PBOC allows the yuan to weaken, or at least stay consistent with the Fed. They can print as much money and stay tread water. You have the EU printing money to build bombs, and then you have Japan. The BOJ might stop its normalization of rates exercise and go back to printing money so that Japan can regain some export competitiveness against China. So again, I think that is what can take us into the 250 and above levels for Bitcoin very quickly.
Mm. Let's talk about Maelstrom. What are you and Maelstrom investing in? Are you guys holding Bitcoin, altcoins? Are you investing in crypto companies as well?
So, our fund, which is basically all, well, not basically, is all of my money. So we're not really a traditional venture capital fund in that sense. We don't have external LPs. We write small checks for early stage projects, 50, $100,000 checks. We do a lot of advisory. So
Mm.
obviously the best project we've advised so far has been Athena, a standout project in the synthetic dollar stablecoin field. And then we do a bunch of liquid trading. And so right now we've slowed down on the early stage token stuff. We believe the prices are too high. The things that we're seeing are not that compelling. Obviously, we're still advising projects like Athena and Aptos and those sorts of things. And some of the money that we've made, we've harvested probably in early first quarter because I believe that there was going to be a large sell-off due to Trump's inauguration, a sell the news type of situation.
Mhm.
And so right now we've been, steadily redeploying that capital mostly into Bitcoin. I think that Bitcoin dominance, which is the percentage of Bitcoin relative to the entire crypto market cap, will continue to rise, and we're going to go somewhere close to 70%. Right now, it's at
Mm.
like 62, 63%.
Right.
And so once we get up there, instead of maybe Bitcoin's at 110, 150, whatever, some level much higher, then we start to see a real altcoin season. And then for projects that have already been listed, we were very interested in projects that have product market fit, that have protocol revenue and have users, which is a very small subset of projects, many of whom we've already invested in and we've seen them grow over the last few years. We'll double down on the liquid side because their token prices have gotten so destroyed because everyone just gravitating towards the highest quality crypto, which is Bitcoin. And then obviously I think we'll get back into whatever the shittiest of shitcoin theme is for this next leg of the cycle. I don't know what that'll be.
We think is meme coins a return of meme coins?
I don't think meme coins will return to the same extent that they were, 6 to 9 months ago. Yes, there'll be some meme coins that retain value, and some of Murad's whatever thing will probably go up in value. Most of them will not. They'll just be stuck in limbo because I think the retail trader, they did the meme coin thing, they lost a bunch of money.
Yeah.
There'll be a new thing that's shiny and new with no history. And so everyone will gravitate towards that and we'll be trading that. I don't know what that's going to be, but we'll participate as well because, when music is playing, you got to dance.
Yeah, well said. Arthur, is there any hope for Ethereum? I'm an ETH holder. It's
I am
painful
too.
to
We
look
hold a
at.
lot of ETH.
It's painful to look at that chart.
If you think about layer ones, and I try to frame this as if I had a fresh unit of fiat capital today and had to invest in a layer one, which one would it be? Now, I think ETH is the best relative performer possibly for the future because it's the most hated layer one.
Mm,
Everybody's dogging on it, saying, "Oh, they haven't done anything in years," and blah blah blah. But if you look at what Ethereum is, it's the number two largest cryptocurrency by market cap. For a proof of stake system, it's the most secure because it has the most amount of value staked securing its network. It has the most amount of developer activity and talent. Yes, Solana and some other blockchains are catching up in that, but Ethereum is still the largest developer community for DeFi. Every single major DeFi primitive began on ETH. So if you want to think about the new developers creating the new primitives that are going to derive the next, Aave, Compound, Uniswap, those type of things, I think they're going to happen on Ethereum versus any other blockchain. Not to say some of those other ones aren't good trading vehicles. That is why I think, and then the only thing why people are mad is because they have the layer two sort of fee issues and the price is down.
mm,
Let's say if ETH is rallying faster than Solana or some of the other layer ones, everyone forgets about all that shit and they remember, oh yeah, it's the
yeah,
biggest, it's the most secure, and then that's what they start touting in their mind as a reason why they need to own ETH.
right.
So again, I think if you're looking at it from now until in the future and on a risk reward basis, I want to trade the thing or own the thing that's the most hated of the previous cycle, Ethereum, versus the thing that was most loved, something like
Mm,
Solana. That's not to say that Solana is not going to rip. It
right.
just won't rip as much as ETH.
Do you think what you usually we see like narratives, right? Do you think a strong narrative, and it's not really a narrative, it would be a factual thing, but the SEC is looking to add or staking to the Ethereum ETFs. And that could attract a lot of inflows, get the narrative out there that you can earn this yield. Here's the mainstream folks, come on in, earn your yield, yada, yada. But also the upgrades that are going to be coming to native to the layer one versus the layer two scaling solutions.
Maybe, but I don't think that TradFi doesn't set the narrative. Retail DGen set the narrative. And so the price will rally well before, if it does, any of that stuff. That'll just be icing on the cake. Bitcoin was rallying well into the ETF, the BlackRock ETF, and all the others being launched, and then it became another reason why people wanted to be long Bitcoin. It wasn't the primary reason. So
Mhm.
I don't. I think that's icing on the cake.
Oh, for sure. Now, there's been a lot of talk between Ethereum and Solana and the battle there. I see a lot of enterprise adoption happening around Ethereum. I mean, BlackRock, they launched their tokenized fund. on ETH. Fidelity just came out and said we're going to launch a stablecoin in ETH. We're also going to tokenize a fund on ETH as well. But Solana seems to be more of the retail. I want to launch NFTs or meme coins. That's where I go. Is it that, as far as the dichotomy between the two?
I mean, I'm cribbing something that Guy, the founder of Athena, said. The TradFi doesn't give a fuck about layer one blockchains
Hmm.
and which one it is. They care about we're the users. And if I'm a salesperson, okay, there's a big user base on ETH. I'll launch there first. Boom, I launched on ETH. Oh, there's some people on Solana who want my product. Boom, I'll launch on Solana. People on Aptos, yeah, launch on Aptos. People on Sonic Lab, yeah, I'll launch there, right? Like pick your layer one blockchain. If you've got a differentiated set of users, the end product originator will issue there. They don't care about security and all the decentralization, all these things. But it doesn't matter because it's a centralized product that they're selling anyways. They just say, if there's somebody who wants to buy my product and I can integrate that, okay, here's the cost of integration. Here's how many people I can potentially sell this product to. If the math makes sense, then I do it. It doesn't matter what the blockchain is. So they might have chosen ETH first, but they'll be on Solana pretty quick and all the other ones down the line. So I don't think that should be a reason for or against investing in a particular blockchain because a TradFi asset manager does not care what it is. Just are there more people I can sell this stuff to?
That's a great point because recently Securitize they announced that BlackRock's Biddle Fund moved to Solana as well. So Arthur, do you see the future being multi-chain and that there's going to be a good amount, maybe 20 blockchains running around the world, and it'll be consolidated to that?
I mean, we're already in a multi-chain. We're already in the future, right? And there'll be infinite number of there'll be as many layer one blockchains as there are VC Muppets willing to fund these things, right? So we've got the Berry chains and the Monads and the Mega ETH and all these other layer one things. Why? Because somebody in Western Europe and San Francisco had a fuck ton of money and they had to do crypto. So let's just throw these guys a bunch of money to build the next fastest da 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 da
Hmm.
layer one blockchain with no fucking clients, right? So we're gonna have many more of those because once this market recovers, and this is one of the best performing subsects of asset management, guess what? All the money is going to flow over here, and you're going to have these mega funds with all this money. You need to deploy it. And one of the best ways to deploy money very quickly is a massive layer one project that aims to fix Ethereum or fix Solana or fix one of these other, pick your layer one blockchain that they want to fix. And then they just get a few $100 million from the usual suspects and they go and build something that nobody needs. So again, we're going to keep having that. Not going to go away. And they throw a great party. So who am I to throw shade? I'll keep drinking the free booze.
So on that note, right, is this the best macro trade right now? And how long do you think these type of returns stay in play? Is it the next two bull markets or just one more 2028?
I mean, I think that this is the if you want to talk about what is going to perform the best when the people in charge reflate the system to fight the change that's happening at a global macro perspective, I think crypto is the best place to be. Bitcoin is restart. The upside is we've seen how Bitcoin has performed over since 2008 until the present, when the Fed devalued the dollar effectively by printing all that money. We've seen how Bitcoin has performed when the Chinese yuan has depreciated. We've seen how Bitcoin has performed in a global pandemic when the authorities flooded the system with liquidity. Again, it's always been the best performing asset relative to stocks or even gold. Although I think gold is going to have a great run as it's reintegrated as a global neutral reserve currency. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin has been the best performing asset since 2008, period. There's just nothing else has done better. And it'll be continue to be so because it's a small door relative to the gargantuan infinite amount of fiat that needs to find a home in a real asset and it's portable. I can take it anywhere. I can store it in my head, right? It's just one of those things. It's got the best properties. And so as more people realize that, I think that this is going to be the best expression of that trade. Yeah, you can pick some stocks and maybe there's a few commodities that'll do well. Of course, if that's your thing, there'll be definitely ways to earn uh, over average returns. But again, I think Bitcoin does the best.
And of course, the scarcity aspect, right? It's hard cap. Gold, they're going to continue to mine more gold and stocks and all that. It's not hard cap like Bitcoin, of course.
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts on the ETFs, and do you see that as a good thing, or is it a bit of a Trojan horse, TradFi taking over Bitcoin, right? Where the majority of the public or population may go to BlackRock and Fidelities, and they don't have the self-custody aspect of Bitcoin. Obviously, it doesn't trade on the weekends and things like that. And I don't want to. I don't think the United States would try to do this like they did with gold, in the early days of confiscating it. But if they wanted to, it's there in the ETF wrapper. What do you think about that?
So I think an ETF is not Bitcoin. It's a financial asset. I want to trade Bitcoin to earn more fiat. That's my goal, and which is a perfectly fine goal. That's what people who own the ETF are there to do. And Larry Fink and his ilk are there to provide a service, which is I'm going to custody it. I'm going to give you this wrapper that trades on these TradFi markets. You can put it into your retirement account and blah, blah, blah. We were completely within the TradFi fiat system, but giving you a return that's coming from outside the system. And that's fine. But at the end of the day, an asset manager is a passive institution. They don't do anything with any of the assets that they hold. So is BlackRock going to sponsor core developers, get involved in protocol upgrades, have an opinion on all these types of things? Most likely no. It's going to be individual holders or people who own businesses within the ecosystem. They're the ones who are going to drive the change and make sure that Bitcoin stays relevant going into the future. So it's great for the fiat price of Bitcoin that you have, this massive horde of people wanting to get that fiat return. Again, it's an open system. That's the whole point. This is what
Mm.
Satoshi created. So I don't think it's a good or bad thing. I just think it's another facet of the market. And I don't think people should say, oh, we need to ban the ETFs or anything like that. But the whole point is an open system.
Yeah, for sure. And uh, I think I was talking to Mark Yusko about this. He was saying if anything like that happened anyway, uh, you because it's all in an open system on the blockchain, we could blacklist that Bitcoin, so to speak. And I don't know, it only the ones that's
Under what circumstance?
if they try to confiscate the Bitcoin, so to speak. Um, if
I don't
that
know.
was
That
a scenario.
sounds a bit suspect.
For sure. Okay. US crypto regulations and this favorable environment we're in. What are your thoughts on this 180 from what happened under Biden with Gensler and Elizabeth Warren? And do you see a boom, companies returning to the United States, maybe BitMex opening up more in the United States and things like that?
I think ultimately, if you take a look at what was happening with the FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried fiasco, if he hadn't, if this is always the if you hadn't of when you have a massively over leveraged trade, which that's what he did. If he hadn't stolen all the money and the market went against him, he would have gotten all the licenses. He was poised to get a license to issue a stablecoin. He was poised to get a bunch of other licenses from the SEC. He was poised to get some licenses to do derivatives with the CFTC, all predicated on the massive amounts of campaign donations and money he was spending politically in the United States. Now, obviously, he was a complete fraud and he was stealing people's money. And when that came out, everyone who he was dealing with felt embarrassed and had to basically do a 180. And they said, oh no, we hate crypto. We're not a bunch of like on the take politicians. And I think that was sort of the main, you know, 180 thrust that the Biden administration and all the other, downstream Democrats took after FTX because they were embarrassed and there's pictures of them with Sam and shaking
Yeah.
his hand and going on stage with him at conferences and all this kind of stuff. Right. And so Trump and his brand of the Republicans saw an opportunity. Here's an ecosystem. They've got material wealth. They've been abused by the previous administration. Let's use this cohort as a great fundraising mechanism. And as voters, right? Supposedly 50 million people in America hold crypto, right? So I'm sure some of those are marginal swing voters, and they
Yeah.
helped bring Trump and a lot of Republicans into office in 2024. And so now there's a lot of talk about what sort of crypto regulation the United States should have. I've been pretty vocal on record that I think that the best, if I was in their shoes, I am not. I'm just a private citizen out here. And you wanted to have the biggest, most robust crypto ecosystem within your particular country, you should do what the United States did in 1996 with the internet platforms, which they basically said you can do whatever you want. The things that happen on your platform is not your responsibility. If somebody commits a crime using email or AOL or Google, that's their thing. They committed the crime. It's not up to you, Google or platform operator, to police that activity and prevent it from happening, right? And so, if we adopt a similar sort of situation to crypto, it's basically saying, Bitcoin is free speech, it's private, we're not going to touch it. If you defraud somebody or steal someone's money, we're going to come after you, and all that kind of stuff. But you are free to do decentralized finance and build an exchange, and we're not going to put any rules or regulations or licenses around that. Watch how many people move to the United States to open up a crypto business. It would be, insane the amount of activity that would happen in America, similar to the way that all this activity happened in, Silicon Valley with the mega platforms like the Googles, Amazons, Facebooks, Microsofts, all those sorts of players who all benefited from the 1996 Communications Act, Section 230, for those of you who are into that.
Yeah, for
So I
sure.
think something similar should happen with crypto. What's going on right now is more of the same, traditional politics, which is okay. There's a bunch of different people who have vested interests. They're all speaking into Trump and his advisors' ears, and then it's up to them to come up with what is this bill or slate of bills that they're going to put forward, and what do they get enacted. Who knows what that'll be? I have no idea. I'm not really in the weeds on the different stablecoin acts or licensing and all that kind of stuff. But that's just more of the same politics. It could be good, it could be bad. I don't know. But if they really wanted to do something, I wouldn't say radical because they already did it with the big internet platforms.
Hmm.
Or another country wanted to do something similar. If they really wanted crypto and these really smart people to be within their made up jurisdiction called a nation state, then they could do something like this as well.
Mm. Yeah, I hope they do that sooner than later and they get these bills through. And we got to, of course, make sure they're good and balanced because you never know. The devil's in the details. Stablecoin market. We're seeing everybody and their grandma launching stablecoins now. I think Ripple, you got PayPal, Circle is about to IPO. We've seen they filed to do that. Tether is still king of the hill, though. How do you see the stablecoin market playing out? Are we like at a trillion in market cap by next year? Banks getting involved now that the restrictions are being loosened and things like that.
So I think this, when you say stablecoin revolutions, this is mostly just a bunch of American companies or people in America who now want to issue stablecoins for Americans. And I think they're missing the point. The reason why Tether is the most successful stablecoin and will continue to be the most successful stablecoin is because it offers US dollar banking to those who do not have US dollar banking, which is everyone outside of America. Americans have US dollar banking. They have instant settlement of dollars,
Mm.
Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, PayPal, all these types of things, right? They're not perfect. I'll give you that. They're centralized. Who cares? But if you're a random American, I can send you dollars and even not using the banking system.
Mm.
So I'm not exactly sure what a Circle or Ripple or all these or JP Morgan or Bank of America, what's this product they're just gonna make a better version of Venmo? Okay, great. But all you guys can go and raise $100 million and then go compete on advertising dollars to convince this person to save 1 cent on their transaction fees or download another app on their smartphone to send money between each other. Great, go and do that. I don't want to be anywhere near that business because that's just a money losing exercise for most of these individuals. And the client already has access to the product. They don't need another dollar banking solution because they already have one. Now, talk about the Chinese person or the exporter in Africa or somebody in Argentina. They need dollar banking. Is anyone trying to solve their problems? Well, Tether solved their problems.
Mm.
USDT worked great. When I travel to Argentina to go skiing, I pay everybody in USDT. It works,
Mm.
right? There's a reason why Athena has such appeal. I can earn an above average yield over treasuries, getting this basis yield, and I don't need to have access to the US Treasury market or access to the centralized exchanges. I can just buy this, staked USDE and earn this yield. This is who this is for. That is why these businesses have done so well.
Mm.
Everyone else is saying, "Oh, there's this new bill in the U.S. that's sort of codifying how stablecoins are done. Therefore, I can launch a business." I'm looking at Tether. Oh, Tether is like 140 billion mark circulating supply.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, America's the biggest place in the world. I should be able to do that. And so I'll go follow the rules and, raise a bunch of money, and then boom, I'm gonna go after Tether. But you're not going after Tether. Tether's not in America. I mean, of course it is, but it's not. That's not their core customer. The core
Right.
customer is outside of America. So I think everyone is fundamentally missing the point here of why certain stablecoins are successful, and ultimately they're just lose all their investors' money.
Mhm. All right. Final question before we hit the wrap up items. Are the best prediction by 2030? How do you see us interacting with Web3 and crypto? Is a lot more usage of stablecoins? Do we have digital identity on the blockchain? More people holding Bitcoin? What do you see?
Mm. I mean, honestly, I don't know what the thing will be. I think we'll be better at payments, I would imagine, possibly, hopefully more integrated into consumer stuff. Now, obviously, I'm an advisor of Aptos, and I think they're working very diligently on bringing extremely low cost and fast payments. Obviously outside of America for things that people actually want to do. So they built the system for Facebook. And that is the sort of client base that they're going after with these payment systems. And I would love to see something like that more ubiquitous. So I can just take my smartphone, NFT tap, and boom, there is, some stable coin transferred over the Aptos network to the merchant, and I can go and spend my crypto that way because it's fast and cheap enough for that kind of use case. I think we're going to see somebody do that quite well by the 2030s, and that'll probably be a massive revolution in sort of consumer payments, especially outside of the U.S., Western Europe.
Mm. Do you see like NFT technology powering contracts, deeds, vehicle titles, and things like that, concert tickets and stuff like that?
Maybe, I don't know, could be.
Hmm. All right. First wrap up question. If you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
Ooh, house music.
Rapid fire questions. Favorite food,
Favorite food, chicken.
favorite musician or band,
Daft Punk.
favorite movie,
Dune.
favorite book.
Three Body Problem series.
When you're not doing working in crypto, what are you doing for fun?
Playing tennis and skiing.
Arthur, pleasure chatting with you. I appreciate your insights and would love to
Thank
have you
you.
back on. But thank you so much.
Absolutely.